This is the afternoon shift here on WBEZ Chicago. Good afternoon. I'm David Shaper, and I'm sitting in for Nyla Boodoo. You know, when the weather starts turning cold like this, I start thinking of a few things like potholes. And we've had a lot of them the last couple of years here in the Chicago area. In fact, our infrastructure seems to be not in the greatest shape. Well, the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, or CMAP, has a new plan to raise $300 million to fix up our region's crumbling infrastructure. Under the proposal, a quarter of a penny sales tax would go into effect in the 7-county area that CMAP oversees. That includes Cook and the Collar counties, which also now includes Kendall County. And it would be used to work on roads, also transit, water, and open space projects. Joining me on the line now to explain is CMAP's Executive Director, Randy Blankenhorn. Randy, thanks for joining us, and welcome to the afternoon shift.
Thanks, David. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's get right to it. How would this quarter of a penny sales tax work, and how would you raise the money and fix the projects?
Yeah, we're looking at a quarter of a penny sales tax region-wide, which raises about $300 million a year to really look at three different types of infrastructure. The first, as you mentioned, is transportation. The second is water, particularly as it relates to flooding and water supply. And then the third is parks and open space. So it's a relatively broad definition of infrastructure, but it really are the kinds of things that we think drive the economic success of the region.
Now, the way it works now is we have a gas tax, a state gas tax, do we not, or a sales tax on gasoline that helps fund infrastructure, but that goes statewide. This is regional only. Is that right?
It is. And we want to continue to work at the state level to increase that state gas tax, and as well as the national level. But we think that the state and federal governments can only do so much. And we're going to be lucky if we get increases that's able to maintain the system we have. So if we really want to modernize it, to bring it into the 21st century, we're going to have to invest in ourselves.
Well, and we already have something like that for funding the RTA, do we not?
We do. It's a very similar kind of a regional tax that's very specific. It's raised here. It's kept here. The decisions on how that money is spent happen here, and that's the same kind of a structure we see for this fund.
Well, you know, as I mentioned at the outset, I'm pretty fed up with potholes here in Chicago. Is that what we're talking about, or what other kinds of projects? You also mentioned water and open space.
Yeah, we are talking about transportation, but not so much general maintenance. We think that is still a state and federal role and a local role to a large extent. We're really talking about how do we improve it in ways like that solve multiple different activities. When we're going and fix a road, do we think about pedestrian access? When we go and do a new park, do we think about how can we retain floodwaters in a park space rather than having it in people's basements? So we're really looking at funding projects that solve a multitude of problems. But it isn't just about transportation, and I think we think about transportation as infrastructure, and we forget about water. Our pipes that we move water in are as old or older than our roads, and have the same issues. And sometimes that's harder to explain because you don't see the pothole until the pipe breaks.
Well, I just did a story actually not too long ago on our water infrastructure. Spoke to some of your colleagues there about that, and it is, century-old pipes. We have pipes that just burst now, not just in the middle of winter, but the middle of summer too,
exactly.
Because they are so worn and old. Governor-elect Bruce Rauner has spoken about infrastructure, saying it will be one of his priorities. But do you have any indication of where he stands on a tax increase to fund infrastructure needs?
I do not. I've heard probably what you've heard, that he believes that infrastructure is a key element to a successful economy, that he believes in investing in infrastructure is important. So we want to work with the new administration to think about how we look at it not only from a statewide level, which we will support, but also how we combine this with a new regional fund that is more focused in what we need to do up here.
Well, very quickly, how do you make this a reality? It would have to go before the Illinois General Assembly, the work that your board has done and the approval of this?
Yes, it would take an action of the Illinois General Assembly, and that's where we're working now, is building a coalition predominantly of business and labor and civic organizations to talk about why this is important to them, why it's important to the economy, why it's important to good jobs, why it's good public policy, and help them help us convince the General Assembly that this is something worth investing in.
Have you gotten any sort of response yet? I mean, a quarter of a penny sounds pretty small, but sales tax is somewhat regressive. A lot of people don't like it.
It is, and to be perfectly honest, we're not the biggest fan of using sales taxes for these things either. And if we were just doing transportation, David, we'd be talking about the gas tax. But because we're doing water, because we're doing parks, the sales tax is a broad-based tax that all users pay, and we think that it's the most appropriate. Having said that, there's going to be a whole tax policy conversation, and maybe there's a different mechanism, but we think this is what's on the table today.
Well, we'll look forward to following that as it makes its way through the legislature next year. Randy, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, David. I appreciate it.
That's CMAP's Executive Director, Randy Blankenhorn, talking to us about proposed 0.25 cent increase in the sales tax in the region to fund infrastructure projects.